The Drowned is a combat cycle boss in DC Dark Legion that requires you to have either really good range DPS or a way to deal with her mechanics. This is actually a really well thought out boss fight, some really cool mechanics. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Drowned's kit, we're going to talk about the best teams to use against her, and then we're going to look at a few of those teams in action. First, let's take a look at her kit. So the Drowned has 4 abilities. Her ultimate is called Dark Wave, and it basically shoots this big beam that deals a bunch of damage to your entire team. It incapacitates them, so they're not going to be able to move for a few seconds. And the more dead water stacks the target has, so that your characters have, the longer the incapacitation lasts. So that's really important. Like, one of the most important elements of this fight is to try to cleanse those stacks off. And we're going to talk about a character a little bit later on that is incredibly helpful for doing that. And we'll talk about another character who can't necessarily directly cleanse those stacks, but can prevent those stacks from getting on your characters. And I should point out that dead water is a mechanic that reduces the movement speed of your champions. And that's why if you have melee champions, it's going to be very difficult. Basically, what's going to happen is they're going to get pushed away due to one of the other mechanics. They're going to get pushed away from the Drowned. They're not going to be able to get back, and it's going to be very difficult for them to cycle their ultimates. So Dark Surge, this is a basic attack. It's going to happen periodically, and this is the knockback effect that I was just talking about. Then you have Water Bomb. It's just a mechanic that detonates an AoE, does damage to all of your champions, and there's a really good chance that it's going to apply a stack of dead water when it happens. And then finally, Self-Modification, which it's a passive ability. It means that those basic attacks are going to have a low chance to apply dead water no matter what. And then it's also going to remove debuffs from the Drowned as well. So some of your debuff characters, your dot characters, are probably not going to perform as well against the Drowned as they would against other bosses. It means that for those of you who are clamoring to get Joker or already have him, he's not going to do quite as much. I do see a decent amount of Jokers in the rankings, so I mean, that's promising for people who know they're going to build him, but definitely some other characters out there, some single target range DPS that are going to do better. And here you can see the kit text explaining what Dead Water does. As usual, I've put together a companion guide for this fight. You can see that I went ahead and included the text for all the abilities so that you have that as a quick reference here. And I've also continued the free-to-play, light spend, and whale portions of the guide. And we've got a couple of other items to talk about here. So the first thing I will say is, for free-to-play players, this might be a little bit difficult. You're probably not going to do the kind of damage on this fight that you would against some of the other bosses. You're not going to be able to use that kind of core nucleus that includes your Wonder Woman, and you'll just need to have a little bit of patience here. Notice that I've included Red Hood as a character here. If you look at what's available to someone who probably isn't spending any money on the game, Red Hood does offer a little bit of viability as a ranged DPS. He is going to jump in with his ultimate every now and then, and that does subject him to a few issues where, in general, I think the big reason why myself and others don't necessarily care for Red Hood is because his survivability is really low. But in this case, there's not really much of an issue because he's going to keep getting pushed back. So he's going to jump in, drop his ultimate. He's probably going to get pushed back again. He's going to continue as ranged DPS shooting the boss. So I think he's actually a pretty solid character for this fight. And then I've also included Harley and Superman here. If you don't have Superman yet, you can use Harley. I think for free-to-play players, this is going to be a bit of a shock because it is one area where Superman doesn't do well unless you have a way to sort of cheese the mechanics of the boss. And you want to keep those dead water stacks completely off of Superman to do that. As with Devastator, we do have a few 0-star viability champions that I think you could insert here into your lineup if you have them. And for this fight, it's going to be Zatanna, Cyborg, and Stargirl. You're probably surprised to hear Stargirl. We'll talk about her a little bit more in just a few moments. Suffice it to say that you can put any of these three champions into this free-to-play lineup, or any of these lineups actually, and they should do okay. I think Cyborg's probably the weak link here. I just wanted to include him because there are going to be some folks who don't have a lot of champions on their roster to choose from, and maybe they've pulled a 0-star cyborg that they could plug in. Next, let's talk about light spin. So light spenders, again, you're going to be dealing with some of the same limitations to start out with that the free-to-play players have, which is there aren't a lot of champions that you can even buy as a light spender that are going to help you here. You may see a couple of those that you can purchase from things like the daily deals down in the well section, but you're probably not going to have a lot of them built up. So I've included here some of the same champions that free-to-play players are going to be using. I did include Batman here as well. I do think that Batman offers a decent amount of viability in this mode just because he has a pretty wide-ranging ultimate, and he'll be able to get that off even if he's further back. A character like Superman has to be basically right up against the enemy in order to get the ultimate off, but for light spenders, we're going to talk about Ivy next, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at some of her usability here. So Ivy and Stargirl are the best characters to reduce stacks of dead water. Stargirl can cleanse the stacks, and she does it really effectively even with 0 stars. And then Poison Ivy's vines reduce the chance that other champions will get hit with the debuff. So the way to conceptualize this, and you'll see it when we do a couple of the fights, is she's going to push those vines out. Those vines are going to heal your champions. They're going to try to draw aggro from any enemy that you're fighting. And against the drowned, what it does is it creates more warm bodies, I should say, for the drowned to try to put the debuff onto. And so when those vines pop up, there's a good chance that your Superman is not going to get hit by them. And it doesn't happen every single time this way, but the vines being in existence at all are going to allow Superman to cycle his ultimate. So it really helps out a ton with your team. For the well group, if you're a new player, you're going to notice several bleed characters here who haven't entered the game yet for you. I'm leaving them here for some of the players who have already made it that far because they were playing the game prior to global launch, and as well as just for your future reference whenever you do have these characters in your lineup. Characters like Sinestro are going to be incredibly useful for you here whenever you unlock them. I think Constantine, based on some of the early testing, is probably going to be another similar character that can be fairly beneficial here. I've included Lex Luthor, I've included the Penguin, and I've included Two-Face. They're not champions that I'm super high on. They're sort of B tier characters, I think, in general. But I have included them here because they can do range DPS. And the Penguin, especially because his kit was recently buffed. And I think that his AoE, or the Penguin summons that he creates, could potentially provide similar cover to what Ivy's vines do. So interested in seeing how that plays out over time. I do think that they are useful. They're not going to be probably the champions that you're using for the most part, but some of you may find them beneficial. We also have a heals plus cleanse section here. Obviously, you're going to want to use Stargirl or Ivy if you can. I have seen people successfully use Green Lantern or Mira and just completely disregard the cheese that most of us free-to-play and light spender players have to use with Ivy and Stargirl, but those champions are going to be available for you to do that, and I've seen plenty of whales use them very effectively also. I think what happens is at some point your champions are just strong enough that they can just kind of bypass needing that additional help. And then I did include your optional range supports here, so Zatanna and Cyborg. I do think if once people have Constantine unlocked, having Zatanna there is going to definitely help. But she also is going to help with a lot of your other spiritual damage dealers as well. And since this is a ranged fight, I do think that Zatanna is a really great pick here once you have her unlocked. So let's take a look at a few of these teams in action. And we're going to start with a free-to-play team. We're assuming that you haven't quite gotten Superman yet for this team. So we're running Harley, we're running Mira, Green Arrow, Black Adam, and Red Hood. And you'll immediately notice that ability where she's pushing everyone back. You can see that Harley already has a couple of stacks of dead water on her. And her ultimate is coming up soon. There's the incapacitate ability. Let's see if Harley's able to get back in there and use her ultimate. You see she's struggling, but all of our ranged DPS are able to continue to do as much damage as possible. You see Red Hood went for his ultimate and then he got pushed back, but that's fine. You see that took forever for Harley to be able to get her ultimate off, and that's why I really don't recommend that you use too many champions who have melee designation, because it's just going to be harder for them to put damage out there. You can get away with having one on the team, so you can do your Superman. If you're a whale, you can probably get away with a few more, but like we've got Batman in the mix here. You can see Deathstroke down there and a couple of others, but like I said, for the most part, you really don't want to be using melee on this combat cycle boss if you can avoid it. Did a decent amount of damage there. Green Arrow was the MVP. Black Adam was able to hold his own as well. You could really see like this 102,000. You could almost sub Harley out for any range DPS, and you're probably going to get a better result there. But that's your free-to-play team. Let's switch things up a little bit for a light spender account. So we'll assume that you've replaced your Harley with Superman. And let's assume that you've replaced your Red Hood with Batman. We should see Batman able to get his ultimate off and do a little bit of damage with that. Superman is going to struggle, but he's going to be able to get his ultimate off a few times at least. You see they're taking a lot of dead water, and then they're incapacitated here. It's going to take a little while. See, Superman still hasn't gotten his ultimate off. We should end up doing a little bit more damage than that free-to-play team, though. Yeah, this is not a fight where you are struggling to keep your team alive. It's really just an endurance fight for ranged DPS to put up as much damage as possible. Superman's so close to getting his ultimate. A little bit more damage there. Obviously, Superman didn't even do as much damage as Green Arrow, and Black Adam almost did as much as Superman, just because he wasn't able to get over there and do his ultimate as much as he wanted to. And Batman, you can see, isn't the greatest choice here either, but for the same reason. I'm curious. I think he would have done more damage than our Red Hood, but just something to think about. So now let's look at the whale or more advanced account option, and this is what I was able to get my highest score with today. We'll take our Batman out. We're going to leave Superman in. We're going to take Black Adam out, and we're going to take Mira out. So we're going to put in... Actually, we can't... I don't want to use Sinestro because I'm trying to do this to help more new players. So let's try... We're definitely going to use Ivy, and then we're going to use Stargirl. And for the last one, something that you all can use, we're going to see what Penguin can do. So this is a 5-star Penguin who has very little investment at all, but he will have all of his abilities at his disposal. So you can see that we have a little bit of dead water right now. Stargirl was able to cleanse that, so everyone's going to be able to move at normal speed. And you can see Superman's still not able to get back as much as he's able to get up there a little bit faster than he would with the other two teams. He was able to get his ultimate off there. He should cycle through to it again pretty quickly. And we're keeping those stacks of dead water down pretty low. Stargirl was able to get her cleanse off again. Superman cycling his ultimate. We've already beat the light spend score here. See if we can get to 10 million. Need one more ultimate from Superman. There we go. Do we get it? So close. Let's take a look at the damage. You see there, Superman was able to cycle his ultimate more. He was able to get a lot more damage on the clock. He was able to out damage our Green Arrow. I think that clearly Penguin was the weak link there. We could probably try something else, like maybe even Batman there in that situation, or Cyborg or Lex Luthor. But you have a lot of options, even for new players who don't have access to some of these bleed characters. For reference, we scored about a little over 9.5 million here. My best effort on this account is a little over 13 million. So you're not missing out on too much. That's it for my video on the Drowned. I hope you're enjoying this combat cycle video series. Definitely check out some of my other videos on this topic and others. As always, you can download my infographics on multiple different sources between Discord, Reddit, Twitter, and Instagram. Feel free to share those with your leagues. If you like this video, definitely be sure to subscribe so that you get more DC Dark Legion content in the future, and I'll see you on the next video.